Hi, I'm Zoe. When I was 9 years old, my parents told me I was a curse. And then they left me on a doorstep with a backpack and no goodbye. That sentence has lived in my mind like a tattoo. I never asked for. They never glanced back. Not for my birthdays. Not when I graduated. Not even when I built a life from absolute zero and turned it into something solid. 21 years later, they finally resurfaced. Not for closure, not for reconnection, not to apologize. They returned with one mission. Money. Where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Morning spreads across my desk like a promise that refuses to be loud. Steel, glass, polished surfaces. The kind of brightness that gives lies nowhere to hide. I sit in front of a mug of coffee. I know I won't finish and pull a black folder toward me. 3 thick printed words glare up. Curse. Custody. Cash. I labeled them myself, in that order, because that is the exact sequence of how they tried to script my life. The first file sits on top, an old family video, digitized into something that looks cleaner than the memory deserves. A child with a backpack that swallows her shoulders. A door shutting with the finality of a verdict. I don't press play. I don't need to. I remember every second because it lives under my skin. Next, the bank withdrawal slips. 2 of them. 2 weeks apart. Signatures I memorized before I knew how to spell my own name. $24,000. The money that was meant to protect me if life collapsed. Life did collapse. The money exited first. I slide my finger along the paper until the edge warms. Proof doesn't soothe. Proof is architecture, something you build with so the fall isn't fatal next time. Then there's the stack of returned envelopes, cheap stationery with corners softened by travel and rejection. I keep one with a glittery star sticker in the top right corner. It forces honesty about who I used to be. A little girl who believed sparkle could glue a family back together. It never could. Glitter can't fix people. I saved them anyway. Receipts beat reputation. And I collect receipts. On the very top rests the most recent blow. The formal tuition request. $60,000 disguised as supporting family. Then doubled to $120,000 when they sensed hesitation. They wrote about the years they raised and supported me. Raised is a poetic stretch for locking a child out. I don't cry. I don't pace. I add a noon appointment to my calendar. Attorney call. Subject line. Tuition demand response. I print an email from my uncle, a man who loves sermons more than facts. Blood matters, he wrote. You were given a chance, conveniently forgetting who stole it. The printer hums like a small machine that believes in justice. 12-point font and precision. I fasten the pages together with a gold binder clip. From the bulk pack I bought the first week my company. Finally turned stable. Beside my keyboard sit 3 sticky notes. Record. Respond. Release. This is how I keep my hands steady. Record means I collect everything that tries to evaporate when the past claws at me. Screenshots. Dates, voices, numbers. Respond means short sentences. No flowery language. Let facts do the heavy lifting. Release means once I send it, it leaves my mind. Boundary as a workflow. I take in my office, the place I built with grant proposals, sleepless nights, and floors that smelled like lemon cleaner and bacon grease. Shelves full of books I actually read. A stubborn plant that leans toward the light, even when I forget to water it. And on the wall, the drawing I remade as an adult, a stick figure walking toward an open door. No dog, no applause, just light. When I look at it, the noise inside my ribs lowers to something manageable. Across the desk. The folder waits, patient and heavy. Curse. What they called me to rationalize the damage. Custody. What they relinquished without a second thought. Cash. What they want now that my life looks like something valuable. A company with outcomes. People who rely on us. Kids who email saying, I signed a lease today because your checklist told me how. I whisper the 3 words once under my breath. Not a prayer, a reboot. I mentally map the skeleton of the day. 9 o'clock. Upload all documents to my attorney's shared drive. 10 o'clock. Draft response. 2 paragraphs. 4 sentences, 0 apologies. 11 o'clock. Team meeting about scholarship applicants. The rhythm calms. Routine is evidence that survival eventually turns into strategy. I rest my palms on the desk. The past is begging me to react. It won't get a reaction. It will get a plan. The difference is everything. When I was 9, the world went silent in a way silence shouldn't behave. The kind that weighs on your ribs until breathing feels optional. I remember the rough porch blanket. The concrete freezing my shoes. The neighbor, Ruth Kaplan, appearing like a memory I hadn't earned yet. My mother's car idled just long enough to trick me into thinking it was a joke, then drove away before I could say her name. The grandparents' house across the street stayed locked. The porch light burned like accusation. Ruth didn't interrogate me. She just opened her door and said, Come inside, honey. Her house smelled like cinnamon and novels that had been read more than once. She brought me a sweater that swallowed my hands, and a mug of tea that lost its steam untouched. I didn't cry. Admitting it out loud would have made it real. I watched her move through the kitchen. Soft, calm, steady. When she finally sat down across from me, she said, You can stay here tonight. We'll figure the rest out later. The first sentence that ever felt safe. A week later, she found me staring through the window at the house that used to hold my life. She told me, Some people break what they can't control. I thought she meant my parents were angry. Years later, I understood. They were terrified of their own failure, and I became the mirror. I wrote letters anyway. Hi, Mom. I'm okay. I miss you. Stickers on every corner, because I thought love needed decoration. They came back one by one, returned to sender, like soldiers who died in a war no one declared. I lined them across my bedroom floor. Proof that I existed even if nobody picked me. By 15, I stopped waiting for mail, while helping Ruth clean the kitchen cabinets. I found a manila envelope with my name, not to Zoe, just my name, as if I were an obligation. Inside were bank statements from my grandmother's account, small deposits over the years until $24,000 remained. Withdrawal dates, 2 weeks after they abandoned me. Signatures, both of theirs. They didn't just leave me. They emptied my future. I didn't scream. I didn't smash anything. I drew a picture, a house and a stick figure version of me beside it. No parents. No imaginary dog. Underneath, I wrote in thick marker, Start here. Not hope. Blueprint. It stayed pinned to my wall for years. Every time I saw it, I knew exactly what I lost, and exactly what I was building. Instead, sometimes Ruth caught me staring and said, You don't have to understand everything right now. Just keep building. I had no idea how literal that sentence would become. If there's one truth those years gave me, it's this. Silence isn't only the absence of sound. It can be a weapon. My parents wielded it like experts. But silence can be redesigned. It can become a boundary, a wall that protects without cruelty. That's where everything started with a blanket, a row of returned letters, and $24,000 that vanished into Summy and Niels's idea of family. Graduation days would have felt like an ending, or at least a small victory. But when I walked into the auditorium that morning, something in me already knew what was coming. The program was glossy. Maroon letters across cream paper. I scanned the list of names, honors, achievements, scholarships. Mine wasn't there. They sat me in the back. A section marked overflow. 4 metal chairs near the exit. No tablecloth nor flowers. Someone said it was for quiet seating. It sounded like an apology dressed as courtesy. When they called the top students on stage, I clapped for every name. I smiled for every photo. I'd perfected that smile python. The polite one that doesn't tremble. The one that says, "I'm fine." Really, but when the ceremony ended and no one looked my way, the air around me felt hollow. It wasn't anger that hit me. It was recognition. I wasn't invisible by accident. I'd been written out on purpose. Later, Ruth took my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. "You did it anyway," she said. That was all. It was enough. Years moved differently after that. I stopped waiting to be invited to tables that had already decided I didn't belong. I started building my own. I got a part-time job, saved, studied at the public library. I learned to code from free workshops and borrowed laptops. That's where the idea for Open Vesp began. A resource hub for kids like me, kids who had nowhere to ask. How to even start? The drawing I made at 15, the one that said, "Start here," became a logo. It was a child walking toward an open door. Sunlight spilling past them. It didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to exist. By 25, the site had grown faster than I expected. Donations, press mentions, volunteers from universities. I could never afford. I didn't chase any of it. I just kept that promise I made to myself years earlier. Never let silence win twice. Then one morning, Ava dropped a newspaper on my desk. "You'll want to see this," she said, voice. "Careful." It was a church newsletter from Cedar Rapids. Front page, the Carters celebrate their daughter's success. There was a smiling stock photo of a family. 3 people I barely recognized, and a paragraph claiming they'd supported my journey through a hardship. I stared at it for a long time, not angry, just numb. The way Simeone feels reading their own obituary. Then I pulled out the old withdrawal slips, laid them side by side with the newsletter, and took a photo. Reputation versus receipts. It looked exactly like the math it was. That's when the insight hit me. The thing no one talks about. Families like mine didn't erase you out of hatred. They do it out of performance. They rewrite history so they can live comfortably instead. They need a villain to make themselves look redeemed. I remember saying it out loud. Quiet but certain. I was never the curse. I was the correction they couldn't handle. Please how I stayed calm through all of this. The truth is once you've been erased, facts become your oxygen. They keep you alive. So, I started documenting everything: emails, letters, public mentions. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew one day they'd try to rewrite the past again. And I wanted to be ready. Hospital smell like metal and coffee that's been reheated too many times. I was there with Ruth for a follow-up on her ankle. Fluorescent light, sterile walls, the hume off a vending machine that sounded like breathing. She was in the imaging room when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 20 years. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm right here." My mother's voice. It wasn't aimed at me. She was standing a few yards away. Hand on a young girl's shoulder. Comforting, gentle, the kind-of mother she had never been. Her hair was shorter, streaked with grey, but I would have known that tone anywhere. It froze where I stood. She looked up, met me eyes, and in one heartbeat, looked straight through me. No recognition, not even the kind a stranger offers, just absence. She walked past minutes later. Her perfume still smelled like lilac and cigarettes. My throat didn't tighten this time. I just stood there, silent, almost relieved. There was nothing left to lose. A few hours later, after Ruth was home and settled, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. Saw you. Sorry, that was it. 2 words, no punctuation, no question. I typed back. Thanks. Then turned the phone face down and went back to work. I used to think forgiveness required a conversation. Now I knew it only required distance. The next morning, Ava dropped an envelope on my desk. Cream paper, handwritten address, the kind of thing that pretends to be polite. I didn't have to open it to know it was from them. Inside was a formal request from their attorney. $60,000 for me younger brother's college tuition. They called it an act of family continuity. 2 paragraphs of legal English claiming it was fair because of the years we raised and supported you. Illord once short reel. They couldn't even steal quietly anymore. That afternoon, an email from my Uncle Patrick. Subject line, family duty. His message read like a sermon. Blood matters. So you were given a chance. It's your turn to give back. I printed both documents, plastered them on my desk, and flipped them together. There's a kind of calm that shows up when you've been through some storm before and already built a roof. I called Denise, my attorney. We're not going to reply emotionally. I said, everything in writing, preserved, time-stamped, copied to you. She agreed. We drafted a response protocol together. Simple, efficient, unemotional. Rule 1, respond only in writing. Rule 2, keep every message, every attachment, every envelope. Rule 3, never negotiate through memory, only through evidence. That's when I wrote the 3s and tenses that have saved me more thanants. My boundary scripts, that's inaccurate. Here is what's documented. I didn't do private negotiations about public harms. For all future contact, use counsel. The words sounded cold, but they were really just clarity. I slid letters back into the black folder, cursed custody cache, and realized they no longer scared me. They were simply accords now. I leaned back, surprised at how I could feel compassion and attachment at once. I didn't hate them. I simply understood them. Some people confuse ownership with love, and when they can't own you, they call you ungrateful. I looked out at the golden Austin skyline and whispered, not today. I owed them nothing. I owed myself peace. The package arrived on a Tuesday, no return address. Just my name. Inside was a VHS tape and a shaky note. Found this in the garage. Thought it might be yours. I converted it and watched the grainy scene appear. A porch. A small girl with a giant backpack. Me. My father's voice. You don't live here anymore. A car door slammed. Tire scrunched, then silence. No crying, just wind. I watched once, then sat with the still frame. Proof undeniable, and suddenly I felt lighter. That night, I recorded a simple video. My name is Zoe Brooks. When I was 9, my parents left me on a doorstep and called me a curse. This isn't revenge. It's recording. I posted it on OpenVest. Within days, millions of views, not pity, solidarity. People who'd lived the same eraser. My print stayed silent publicly, but messages trickled in. Their panicking. Then came the GoFundMe using my name, Jacob's face. Lies about my general's matching donation. They used me as PR. I called Denise. She was unfazed. Document everything. So I did screenshots, dates, PDFs organized into unauthorized fundraise evidence. Then I posted ACARM PSA. If people who abandoned you try to rebuild their image with your name, document everything. Their fundraiser vanished by morning. No celebration, just a quiet glance at the OpenVest seal. We're still here. I whispered and went back to work. Then media, a beige room pretending to be neutral ground. My parents walked in rehearsing normal. They spoke of familiar and helping Jacob. I asked which part of abandonment they considered a foundation. I laid out the folder's documents. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to document. Then the script I'd written for moments like this. That's inaccurate. Here is what's documented. I didn't do private negotiations about public harms. For all future contact, use counsel. Their faces cracked. Entitlement collapsing always makes a sound. A week later, the court letter arrived. She owes you nothing. That's a Semenite, an invitation to Jacob's birthday gold foil. Performative love. I went anyway. Sat at the overflow table. Ignored on the back of the tent card. I wrote this table was never mine. Then Illift outside. Denise's email pinged, ruling filed. Case closed. Receipts always win. At the courthouse, reporters asked for a statement. I gave them silence. Later, my parents appeared outside my office. My mother said, "You'll always be my daughter." I received a calm hand. This success taught me what family is and what it isn't. You're free to go. She turned away first. A week later, Open Vest delivered emergency dorm kits in honor of Ruth Kaplan, who opened the first door. At home, I hung the drawing of the child walking toward an open door. I archived the curse. Custody cache folder, not to burn, but to keep as proof. The house was quiet, not lonely. Family isn't blood. Family stays. If this helped you choose boundaries, comment '01 if you need scripts. DM map. My silence isn't agreement. It's an upgrade.